I should begin with an apology. If I don't know, then would it be too outrageous for me to suggest that you probably don't know either? And Keir Starmer said there, and for the record, I thought Kemi Badenoch had quite a good week until the very end. The business confidence in this country was at a 9-year high. I didn't know what he was talking about. And that is a reflection upon the state of the British media, isn't it? Because the first thing I did was check. Confidence levels, Reuters reported 2 weeks ago, among British employers hit a fresh 9-year high this month as companies became more optimistic about the outlook for the economy, according to a survey published on Monday. I don't know the provenance, the Lloyds Bank Business Barometer. Reuters consider it important enough to report. I don't know how widely regarded or respected it is, but it hit the highest mark since November 2015, in other words, since before Brexit. After an 11-point jump in May. There was bad news in April, of course, when Trump introduced the tariffs, which have, of course, many of which have since been suspended. But I honestly didn't know that. And I think, Aggie, Chambre, it's fair to say that Kemi Badenoch didn't either. Certainly the people on her benches shouting, withdraw, withdraw, would have been completely unaware of it. And that is because all of us, in a way, are victims of the bias in the media in this country. That story has barely, as far as I can tell, seen the light of day. And it took Keir Starmer to bring it to the attention of the population.
Yeah, Keir Starmer obviously had read that report, was quite pleased with that report and thought he'd put that in his back pocket for PMQs.
Can't see it in a single... So Reuters did it, and it was sort of international news on their business. I can't see a single national news for the BBC, don't seem to have gone near it. We definitely didn't do it. Maybe the Barometer, the Guardian reported in September of last year about business confidence going to its lowest level, but I can't see anything. City AM did it, as perhaps you'd expect. But anyway, there we go. I think you were right, really. The questions he can but can't answer are turning out to be very productive territory for Kemi Badenoch.
I think that's right. And actually, I think it's worth saying as well, because we talked before PMQ started about Afghanistan and how she would probably not talk about that data leak. But I have just read that just before we came onto it, when Sir Keir Starmer was talking, before she started asking those questions, he did say something about Afghanistan, and he said that Conservative ministers have serious questions to answer over the handling of the data leak and the subsequent super injunction.
So even she wouldn't go anywhere near it at that point.
No, indeed. But yeah, perhaps unsurprisingly, she went on the economy. She had a slightly different tact this week, but again, basically on tax, talking about growth, how her saying the policies that the government had brought in are bad for growth. He, as he so often does, James, blames the inheritance of the last government, which I think is a reasonable point. They were in power for 14 years. But I do wonder after a year whether that is slightly wearing thin. Which perhaps is unfair of me, because if you're in power for 14 years, it has a long tail, doesn't it? The inheritance, and as proved by yesterday, when we found out about this huge part of the inheritance, which that I should stress they continued and appealed against when the judge tried to end that super injunction. But back to PMQs today, Kemi Badenoch talking about inflation being up again, taxes being up again, talking about his budget last year, and trying to get an answer of what a modest income is. That's after the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, said on Sunday that people on modest incomes would be protected from tax rises. So we're back in that back and forth that we saw so much in the election. What is a working person if these three categories of taxes are protected, national insurance, VAT and income, then what is left? And how is the government going to raise taxes, which it feels at this stage when you speak to people within government and around government, that does feel inevitable for the next budget.
Well, this is what I mean by questions that he can but can't answer, in that they probably don't know yet where the threshold is going to be, or where the inevitable necessity of introducing some new taxes is going to land. So when you're insisting on being told where and when they're going to land, and you can't, then, I mean, you know, to be fair to Kemi Badenoch, the person not answering the question looks bad, even though the person asking it knows that they can't answer it.
I genuinely think that is correct. I think they don't know. I was speaking to a Treasury official last week about whether or not they were going to unfreeze or continue the freeze on income tax thresholds, which previously, you remember, Rachel Reeves had said she was going to unfreeze by 2028. And we had an honest conversation where they basically said, I don't think we know yet. I think they are genuinely trying to work out exactly what they're going to do.
Which would be true of any party, any government.
And any government,
yes.
exactly. And you know, with budgets, you basically are doing it until the line when you have to, that time period where you have to give it to the Office for Budget Responsibility to score it.
Anything can happen. The day before, Donald Trump might have another sort of brain freeze and announce an enormous tariff on cheese or something, or on everything, on air.
On air. That could happen. Anything could happen. I think that's interesting because I think that is one of the frustrations with a lot of people that I've spoken to around government about that Donald Trump thing, because they think Rachel Reeves has boxed herself in so successfully with those taxes that I just talked about. And actually, when Donald Trump announced those tariffs initially and came into power, they think that people in government should have said, the world has changed, which they did say. The world has changed so much that we are going to have to change things around. We cannot possibly keep our manifesto commitments, which I think has made things more difficult for them in the first year. So on self-employed too, it's the same argument. Kemi Badenoch asks, a self-employed next in line for a tax raid, and Sir Keir Starmer can't answer, which I suspect will be a bit of a story. She then,
why would the self-employed? I mean, surely it would be about how much the self-employed earned, and you're not going to have a tax that's specific to self-employed people regardless of income.
No, you
I didn't
wouldn't
understand that question, to be honest.
No, but it's just, I suppose, another category of person that it's impossible at this stage to rule out. I don't think you would just put a
So it would be the
on
high-earning self-employed people.
Exactly.
But, of course, we can't tell you what high-earning is.
And James, that was
Aggie.
the last PMQs before summer.
Good Lord.
Good Lord. So
Is it wrong to be a bit relieved?
yes.
Does that make me a bad person?
Yes.
Okay.
Kemi Badenoch did talk about that. She talked about the scorecard, end-of-term scorecard for the government. Said the economy is contracting, inflation highest in the G7, unemployment up every month under this government, spending out of control, borrowing costs more expensive than Greece, and this is just the first year. And Sir Keir Starmer came back with his own scorecard and said, this is what we're going to be telling constituents. And I thought it was slightly new language for him.
Yes, I did as well.
I don't think he's very good at saying, this is what we've done, this is what we're going to do. And he had quite a comprehensive list. He didn't just mention the NHS appointments that he normally mentions.
That's what I thought when I said that she was going brilliantly until the very end. And then he just took this opportunity to drive home several things that people would have been either unaware of or unexcited by, but which he actually, I think the difference, Aggie, may have been he sounded genuinely enthused by these. He sounded proud of these achievements rather than just offering them up as PMQs fodder. And they were all true.
They were all true. I was speaking to some Labour MPs last night who said, we're done with stage one. I think they were speaking slightly in tongue-in-cheek. We're done with stage one. I said, what's stage one? And they said, start fixing things. And I said, well, what's stage two? And they said, start telling people about it. I said, what's stage three? And they said, become popular again.
Well, good luck with that. But a couple of people pointing out the comms are bad. But the comms aren't bad on the business confidence thing. You can't force people to print or broadcast stuff. Can you? You can't. You can get on the phone and say, can you give us a bit of coverage of this? No one got on the phone to me, so that would be comms are bad.
No, and I didn't get an email about it.
No one saw it. Maybe as I say, that the barometer that they've used is not that exciting. I think self-employed people, the changes to national insurance perhaps might be pertinent. A couple of accountants getting in touch with details and explanations that I don't fully understand. And a couple of you pointing out that the reason why I shouldn't be relieved that PMQs is over is that it's proper work for me now. Every Wednesday at 12 noon, I'll have to come up with another topic and do a proper phone-in rather than just getting to knock about with you and Natasha for half an hour. So what's going to come back then? How long are they away for?
So they break up on Tuesday, but I have been told that Monday and Tuesday for the government and for Labour MPs is a one-line whip, which basically means
take the time off.
I'll not be coming in. So.
And how long do they go off? How many weeks? Do we know?
So they come back at the beginning of September. But
Good grief.
So I am committed to pointing out at this stage they are not now going on holiday for 6 weeks. They are going back to their constituencies, which for many MPs is actually the more difficult work because they have to do lots and lots of casework, although I'm sure lots of them will be taking a holiday at the same time.
And some MPs won't be seen in their constituencies at all, of course. Such is their prerogative. Ed Davey, they're going in on Gaza. It's a bleak vista that he describes where the attention of the nation, the population, the fourth estate, the columnists, the commentators reaches fever pitch when we're talking about the Glastonbury Festival, but the needle barely moves now when we're detailing the latest accounts of people being killed while waiting for the pathetic amounts of aid that are actually available. Davey's sounding very statesmanlike at the moment with every passing week. And again, I stress, I think Badenoch had quite a good week until the end. But the contrast between the two is quite stark sometimes.
I think he has a bit more space. He's able to ask the more difficult questions as the third largest party leader. So he talked about Afghanistan at the beginning, said Sir Keir Starmer will have our support if he chooses to do a public inquiry. Listening to John Healey, as I know you did as well yesterday, it didn't sound like John Healey was minded to introduce a public inquiry, quite the opposite. But that conversation is already beginning. And then, as you say, urging the government to go further on Gaza, saying the Israeli plan for Gaza would amount to putting Palestinians in a prison, would be ethnic cleansing, and suggests the UK should be sanctioning the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Sir Keir Starmer responding, the government is appalled by what is happening in Gaza and civilian deaths should be fully investigated. So that is what Sir Keir Starmer has to say on Gaza at the moment. There is actually quite a lot of pressure on him from his own MPs to go further, not just MPs on the left of the party, but other MPs too. I think 60 of his own MPs writing to the Foreign Secretary this week, urging them to recognise Palestine, which is something that they said they would do, but the government's saying we're going to do it when it's conducive to the peace process. And I think there is frustration and worry about that on his own side.
He's had quite a good day, Ed Davey, although sadly this is also something that you won't be seeing in any newspapers tomorrow. He criticised the BBC on the BBC for giving Farage such an easy ride. And where else does that happen? I'm trying to think of a broadcast studio in this country other than the BBC where Farage gets an incredibly... No, I've got nothing. Ed Davey saying they need to raise their game to expose him, and he's just 100% correct on that, of course, but I'd be amazed if you see that in any newspapers tomorrow. So that's it then. I've got to come up with some proper topics between now and September at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday.
I'm very happy to come back on midday.
Right. I shall accept all your submissions with enthusiasm and interest. Thank you very much, Aggie.
Thank you.
And thank you to Mike in Manchester for drawing my attention to that Ed Davey story, because if I've learned anything today during PMQs, it is that I don't know what's going on sometimes because I can only rely upon the news outlets that exist, and none of them went near that huge rise in business confidence or the high level of business confidence in this country, the highest since 6 months before Brexit. And neither did I know that Ed Davey had been giving the BBC a bit of a schooling in what its job should be when it comes to dealing with people like Nigel Farage. So well done, Ed Davey.